Very well. Welcome back. This is Business Insight. Definitely tonight we want to put into perspective the State of the Nation addressed by President Uhuru Kenyatta, which was delivered today. And of course, some of the issues that were highlighted is the renewed fight on corruption, investment in health industry, as well as a major boost to our economic growth, which includes setting up funds for small and medium enterprises, as well as remunerating coffee farmers, among others. Well, those are some of the issues that were highlighted by President. And of course, I told you that we have a team of experts in the house tonight to help us pack and unpack this speech by the President. Seated next to me is Reuben Ndege. He's a governance expert, and he's joining us on the set. Thank you very much indeed, John, for joining us here. And Reuben Kimani is the CEO of Username Investment. He's also here with us. It's a pleasure to have you this evening. And I want to start with you, John. Job, yes. I want to hear your views on the speech.
It was a good speech. I was very happy with what the President delivered. Threefold. One is that unlike the past speeches that the President has been making on the State of the Nation address, this time, other than outlining the things that he wants his administration to carry forward, be it in the economy and such, which he usually does since he took over in 2013, he looked at also the environmental factors that can affect the delivery of his projects. And the three things stood out, and he was very strong about them. One was the issue of unity, unity amongst the citizenry and the nation. Second was social justice. That's really how he put it. And third is the issue of leakages. Leakages of funds, otherwise known as corruption, theft. So you find these three environmental factors, for sure, can affect any economic plan that any nation, forget about Kenya, any other nation has to do that.
Tell me, please.
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry for stepping on your shoes. Yes. The President has made several State of the Nation address in the past.
Yes.
How was this different from what we are used to?
Yes, because in the past, like for instance last year, the President spoke very eloquently on how he wants to grow this, he wants to grow that, he wants us to be food secure and all that stuff. But he never mentioned how he's going to deal with what we call the macro factors that can affect the delivery of those projects. This year, he was very particular. He was saying, if we don't stem corruption, I will not deliver the Big Four. He was saying, if we are not united as a nation, we will not deliver the Big Four. He was saying, if some of the activities, for instance, energy, ICT, interventions, and education, that are required as a base for the citizenry, we will not deliver the Big Four. That was smart of him.
Very good.
Yes.
I'll be coming back to you shortly, but I also want to hear from Kimani. Do you agree with him? If you don't, what else do you agree with?
Brian, first I'd like to say hi to Kenyans. The first thing, I agree with him. The macroeconomic factors he's talking about, if you don't deal with the unity. And for me, I'm coming from real estate sector. And you remember in 2017 when we had a prolonged electioneering year, this really affected the real estate sector to a great length. So the thing about unity is very important. I remember after the handshake, the figures, the numbers started improving for real estate. That tells you that, and there are many other sectors that maybe experience the same kind of growth, and unity is very important. The issue of wastage, corruption, and many other things, I think that one everyone knows. It is not, it's something that will make us not achieve anything if you don't deal with it. When you have very brilliant plans on the ground that can work, they have been thought about so well. All these plans requires funds to be able to achieve anything. And these funds are coming from the government. And these funds, if they are not used correctly, you are not going to achieve anything. So I agreed with him, and I also liked the speech, especially on two aspects. I'm a young person. coming from the SME sector in the real estate industry. And one of the things we have been trying to really achieve is you work so hard to be able to achieve. You work against very difficult economic environment for you to be able to achieve something. And one of it is, of course, credit. I look at the many young people, and if you look at statistics very fast, they'll tell you that 75% of the young people are below the age of 30. That is not a joke. So when he mentioned about the credit guarantee scheme or fund, I think that will help so many young people who are afraid of taking loans from the bank to be able to try something with their lives, try a business that can be able to generate money and generate income. The other thing was this affordable housing scheme. There are so many materials that need to be supplied to the scheme for you to be able to achieve 500,000 housings. And if this work was given to the young people, people like me, I have furniture in the house. To be honest with you, they are made local and they look so good.
And they look good.
So you can imagine how many jobs will be created genuinely if all these materials were to be given to Kenyans and young people in particular. So for me, it was a positive speech.
Job, I mean, Kimani seems to be very enthusiastic about the fact that, you know, a number of issues, you know, were highlighted by the president that touches on young people. What about old people?
Well, we are all Kenyans, but the president talked of unity. So if he can deliver to the young people, then definitely the old will also find their space. And you find that some of the programs he's talking about are actually socio-economic programs, health, that covers, in fact, health really caters more for the old than the young. So if you can get an environment where health and affordable health or universal health is available, then that's a score for the old people. Reuben talks of the monetary stuff that the president talked about.
I think,
yes. Other than that, I'll wish that he moves further and propagates a more solid fiscal and monetary policy generally for the country, because that's something that most economists and even people like us who are professionals have had an issue with.
And actually, we'll be coming to that because, you know, when you talk to economists, I mean, about how they feel about the State of the Nation address, they feel that a lot, you know, was left out that touched on the economy. Like, there was a lot of expectation, you know, from economists that the president would talk about the spiraling debt that now starts at about 5.4 trillion Kenya shillings. If you are the president, I mean, did you had any expectations, you know, from the president to hear on how he was going to deal with these? Which
I think the president took a more optimistic view. Kenyans expected movement forward. Of course, we know that we have quite some huge debts, and everybody has alluded to that before. But the president said that we have averaged 5.5% growth since 2013, which was good. I know during the election years, 2012, 2013, and 2017, 2018, we usually go down. And he's positive that we are going to do 6.3% the coming year. So that was positive. He was giving hope to the people. But yes, in the background, and I'm sure he has good advisors on this, the debt needs to be managed. When we borrow, we need to borrow to stimulate the economy, not borrow to spend. I know in the past the president has talked about the huge wage bill, and he has been urging the legislature and everybody else to try to go into austerity measures so that we can cut that. He needs to come out strongly post this address, which was basically to project a positive image for the country, saying we could be having challenges. We are actually having some drought even in some of our countries, which he really didn't talk about in that aspect because he was positively looking. But once today is over, he needs to call his cabinet and say, guys, this drought needs to be dealt with. Just call the treasury and tell them, guys, we can't be borrowing so much from the local market. That stems the SMEs. Because there's no point in doing all these things to the SMEs if they can't get credit, really. Because the people should give them credit, give it to the banks.
Definitely, we know that the reason why banks are not lending to the SMEs is because they are opting to buy government papers, which are offering better returns. Kimani, I want to hear from you. Then, do you then think the government is committed in dealing with this elephant in the room when it comes to lending to the SMEs?
I would say it's a very difficult question. You see, we have seen intention in the speech today to be able to establish a fund that will encourage the bank to give loan facility to people like us, the SMEs. I think that's a positive step to start with. But if you look, I checked some of the figures from Equity Bank, and they were saying I think 54% of the income came from lending from the government, which is very scary. It tells you that 46% was lending to businesses. Some of them are corporates. I don't know what percentage was lending to SMEs. Yeah. It might be smaller, and maybe this can be said of many other financial institutions. So what I feel is, of course, is a step in a positive direction, but as Job is saying here, so you need a more comprehensive approach. Of course, you mentioned what I want to see in the next few days or few weeks or few months is a proper implementation guideline. You see, sometimes the president might have very good ideas, but you find that when the implementation comes, there are so many difficulties, just like any other project. And then you find something that was a very good idea did not see the light of the day. What you expect, businesses are not easy, especially when you are starting up. For small enterprises, most of them fail. They say 8 out of 10 will fail. Basically, they lose money. So that's why you find banks, as any business, they will not agree to just give you money for you to go and lose it. So that program will work, but I would say this. It should be followed up with very tangible policy guidelines and practical plans that can be able to work. And if you look at, allow me to mention something very fast. The other day, the Minister of Interior, Dr. Matiang'i, something that I'm very keen on, talked about young people, 76% of young people being involved in sport betting. This gambling, right? That is very dangerous. That tells you that these are people who are supposed to build Kenya. Instead of doing small businesses, they are opting betting. What we are telling them, it's this instant fame, instant riches. You can just bet and get 1 million shillings. Of course, it doesn't work. Let us be realistic. But that also gives you another perspective of a population of young people who, if they were driven in the right direction, they would do wonders. Imagine if you are talking about 76% of young people starting small businesses. How much impact do you have the economy? And very fast. They say, I was checking this, that 14.9 million jobs are contributed by the SMEs.
14.9.
And they were saying it's 28% of GDP. What we are saying, if we direct those energies by having well thought out programs, you can have 76% of young people contributing to the economy. These are taxes, these are thousands of jobs, and any economy in the world, it's about, it's the middle, the small and middle enterprises that contribute to the economy. So I feel this one should be followed up with very tangible plans for it to be able to work. The thing about even these other big 4 items, I think it is very important to intentionally involve the young people, even if they don't know a lot. These are people who are willing to learn, so that we create capacity over time of people who can be able to take up matters in terms of the economy. I
can see Job is somehow lost in ponderation. But I want to hear from you, Job. Which aspects of our economy do you think the president left out?
Well, he covered quite some areas. He talked of the agri areas. He talked of manufacturing. He talked of, in agri, he mentioned sugar, maize, coffee, manufacturing. He talked of leather, textiles. Basically, I think manufacturing probably he would have said more in the manufacturing, what he said.
He talked about, assembling of vehicles.
Yes.
Whereby he talked about Peugeot.
Yes.
And a Volkswagen of Germany, setting up, their plan here.
Yes, but that's it's good. There's a good
tip
step.
Of the iceberg.
Yes, it's not enough. I think this country has quite some potential to manufacture stuff. In fact, our position in the Horn of Africa gives us that opportunity to be able to manufacture and sell to the region around us. So he should have, and he mentioned, because part of his requirement on the state was to talk about the international treaties and such. And he mentioned the Africa Free Area, which now comes into effect when Gambia signs it. Mentioned the East African Protocol, where Tanzania is dilly-dallying and the rest. Yeah. But I've liked how he looked at this thing in a Pan-African approach to open up the market. But we lost quite some steps several years ago when Rwanda and Tanzania started bullying us economically to try to get some of our traditional partners to talk them. So I think he did not open up a lot of his talk on how much more we can manufacture. Yes, we can do the vehicles. I would have hoped to hear him saying, let's do the tractors. There should be no reason why Kenya should import tractors, whether they're duty-free from UK or from wherever. We should do them here. Yes, I mean, before the vehicles, which, other than the fact that they help us move, they don't contribute much to the economy. The tractors do contribute directly to the economy. I should have expected a tractor manufacturing company based somewhere, be it in Eldoret or in Mombasa or wherever. Is that something we can do?
There's also another quarter that feels that, apart from, security and, of course, the fight on corruption, there's a feeling that, the president should also have spent considerable amount of time, outlining the achievements of the Big Four agenda so far.
I think he did. He did, but like I said in my opening statement, the president had been doing that. In fact, in all his previous addresses, that's what he has been doing. But he realized that these things cannot happen without the microenvironment being right. So this is basically the first year that the president is trying to link the microenvironment and the economic and social stability of the nation. And it's a first. I think ever since President Kibaki's speech at Uhuru Park when he took over in 2002, I've not heard the president speaking like the president spoke today. He actually interlinked the two. You cannot operate outside the microenvironment.
Yeah.
Yes. This time, he has linked them. He has said very clearly, you guys have said all these things. But if you're not united as a country, zero. You have said all these things. If you steal our money, zero. You have said all these things. If you don't educate our children in the right framework and in the right curriculum, zero. So the president has gotten it right. What now I hope he does is to rally the rest of his troops. Like, for sure, the monetary policy and fiscal policy of this country is bad. We know who are running it. The president needs to sit down with those guys and say, you guys, if you can't fix this thing, they are wanting it, then you guys better ship out.
Very well. Yes. Kimani, before we take a quick break, the president also talked about, one of his Big Four agenda, which is housing. And he said that, his administration, is pleading with Parliament, to pass the necessary laws to ensure the facilitation of affordable housing. Do you have hopes in Parliament that it will do the right thing at the right time?
Let me first say the need for housing in Kenya cannot be understated. And you already know the figures, 2 million, and these are so many Kenyans. It tells you 1 out of like 10 Kenyans. Only one person has a house. And we need to do something about it. For me, I believe they'll do something about it. This Big Four is being driven by the president himself. And I also expect that being driven from the highest office in the land, this thing should be able to work. If it goes to Parliament, of course they have the machinery, they have the system. They should be able to pass all the bills. There are quite a number, some of them to do with land, some of them to do with housing, some of them to do with, you see, the 1.5% levy, for you to be able, some of them to do with financing and all those things. For me, I believe This is the president. He has, of course, you're talking about a parliament that is made up of members.
He has the political wherewithal.
You see that, the political aspect.
Yeah.
I also believe there's a political will to be able to make things done.
Things get to move on fast.
And I think what is required from my own perspective is a bit of follow-up, is a bit of pushing. And I'm very optimistic that they'll be able to pass those bills. What I want to say is that we have a target of 500,000 houses.
Yeah.
Even in our business, we have targets. Sometimes you reach them, sometimes you don't. And in most cases, we set very high targets for ourselves.
Very good.
We don't reach them all the time. What I'm saying, even if you are to do even 100,000 houses, and I'm not saying they will not be able to do 500,000, but even if you are to do 100,000 houses, for me, I feel this will be a very big impact. And remember, this thing is not ending in 2022. We'll continue doing it. So at some point, we'll even do 1 million houses.
Very good.
What we need is to start and tell Kenyans that this thing is possible. Even if you are going to do the first 5,000 houses, you'll have goodwill. The kind of resistance you are getting sometimes from even labor organization like COTU in terms of 1.5%
deductions.
The moment people start seeing that I'm working somewhere, I'm earning 50,000 per month, I've registered with Boma Yangu, he talked about 175,000, that's a big number, and I get a house. People will start taking these things seriously. There'll be some ripple effect.
We'll be coming back with more, and of course we'll be touching on that Boma Yangu initiative. Of course, 175,000 people, that's quite a huge number. But of course, as we say, that's a tip of the iceberg, bearing in mind the millions of Kenyans who would want to acquire a house. We are coming back with more discussions. We continue with our discussion here on the State of the Nation address. I was talking to Job here, and I want to find out from you, Job, the president talked about, an economic growth projection of about 6.3%. Don't you think that sounds overly optimistic, bearing in mind that the agriculture sector, which actually forms the backbone of our economic growth, is facing some serious headwinds because of the ongoing famine?
Not really. I think we've had famine before, and we still manage to reach high numbers. The interesting thing about economy is that several subsections of it can make those numbers move very high up, even as some sections of it are struggling. You know that we are in the phase of doing part of that SGR to Naivasha and then to Kisumu. If that itself happens, that building itself, amount of build work that's going to take place, will greatly show a positive number on the economy. So even as agriculture could be struggling on one section, but construction and building, just because of the SGR, for instance, is boosting the economy. So 6.3 is achievable. We have achieved it no matter the time. But that does not actually dilute what you are saying, that we are going to have some issues because of the lack of rains. The president talked about irrigation. This is something he has been talking about. In fact, the Jubilee government, one of the things they kept on talking about was irrigation since they got into power. All these big dams, which some have now appear to be actually probably wastage instead of them being what they're supposed to be. So if the president carries on with that irrigation agenda properly, then it may not really matter whether they have rains or not, because we can still dam the excess when it does come, and we can use it throughout the year to do that.
And he also talked about, the construction of water pans, which have helped to create to irrigate about 4,000 acres of land. Would you have wanted to hear what became of Galana Kulalu?
Yes, and we all know that, but I said the president took a positive spin to this. He was giving us hope, but I hope that once the day ends, he'll still go back to his Minister for Irrigation and say, my friend, we wasted 7 billion on that thing in Tana River. That 7 billion, had I given it out to farmers or to the SME, for sure you will have gotten more positive impact than that wasteland that we did on that side. So we all know, everybody knows that there's a problem there, and I'm hoping that in this fight against corruption, which includes abuse of office and theft, somebody will be responsible for what happens there. Why we sank in a lot of money in a project which we had technical support from Israel and others who know how to do this thing, why we failed to do it ourselves. So he needs to be concerned about that.
He needs to be concerned.
Yes.
Kimani, let's come back to the issue of housing, which you are very passionate about. Were you looking forward to hear, more tangible results, from so far the efforts that the government has put in place to ensure that the 500,000 houses are delivered? Were you, like, for example, waiting to hear, some of the concessions, that the government plans to give, to the private sector, to help with the delivery of houses?
As a business person, definitely, I would have expected to hear more and more, especially where housing is concerned and the overall real estate sector. I was very keen to hear what he's going to say about anything to do with the sector as a normal business person. But I also think, like he is saying, this year, maybe the president here is for me to be, I have very good plans, but for me to be able to achieve, I have to ensure that we are united, we have to fight corruption and many other things. But that does not say they're not, we don't have some things that are happening on the ground. Yeah. Especially if you follow the PS for housing. There's so many things. Of course, he has been trying to communicate, of course, giving confidence to especially the Kenyans, the Kenyan people. Some of the plans that I know you have already seen, and I think last time when we came, we discussed at length some of the plans that are in place. And I think one of it was what you are calling the boma yangu. That is one of the issues. The other part was about financing. I think that's the biggest problem where housing is concerned, financing. Somebody who is somewhere earning 50,000 in employment or doing a business somewhere, how can they be able to afford a house worth 5 million? Then this person need to be financed by somebody who will agree to finance them, right? For them to be able to come to me who has a complete house and maybe be able to purchase it. I expected more, but that does not mean things are not happening on the ground. And I still insist here, what matters for this program to be able to work is to get boots on the ground. Talk about launching some of these programs, and I'm saying, even if it is 5,000 houses, the plans, I think they are already finished in terms of setting groundwork, land has been found, and many other things. Start doing it. For me, that's what I'm waiting for. Let us start doing what we have planned on the ground, and this thing will start building up slowly. If you don't do that, I think we still have 3 years to 2022 for that particular target, which is a very short time. Time keeps going forward. But if we don't go to the ground and start building those houses, even if it's 5,000, we'll find ourselves in maybe 1 year. And then we realize this thing is like it's not achievable. For me, I know it is.
It is achievable. Very good.
I'm looking forward, especially very fast, to the participation of, especially the smaller enterprises, the thousands of them in this, and they need to be involved. And I have to say this, you see, sometimes you look at a project in a way that you want to achieve the results. That's why we have to get experts from out there. But if we don't build our own capacity, we'll have issues. So slowly by slowly, we have to engage SMEs in this country to start doing things. Maybe in the wrong way at first, but we keep
finally we'll get
them,
it right.
We'll get it right.
Very good. To Amithi's job, I mean, the government talked about, the president talked about 175,000 people have registered for this Boma Yangu initiative. And we know that millions, are on the queue. The question is this, where is the government going to get money to put up, houses for these millions of people, honestly?
No, they have a plan. They have, of course, the housing development levy, that's all...
The 1.5%.
Yes, 1.5%. And then there's people who have promised to put in money. We have some international financiers who have said, if this thing kicks off, you're going to put in money. But I think it can be broadened even beyond that. If the government were to, for instance, involve the county governments, this thing should be seen like concentrated in Nairobi. I'm expecting, in fact, I was hoping that once the president breaks ground at Park Road, very quickly there should be some ground broken in Nyeri and one in Kisumu and one in Kakamega. So that will make the numbers that he's talking about come up very quickly, because the housing constructs in some of these areas are much lower compared to the housing constructs here, though the demand here is higher. So the numbers will look good if there is a bit of devolvement of these to other people. So there should be a framework between the national government, in my view, and the county government about housing, so that everybody kicks it in and ensures that they take their part in it.
And during the just concluded devolution conference, we saw, county executives, and I'm talking about governors, lamenting that they have been left out in some of these projects that the government is undertaking, for example, the one on housing. And we know for sure that, the county governments are a critical cog in the wheel of ensuring that, we have affordable housing in this country. To your myths, then are we likely to fail because we are not inclusive in nature?
Not really, because at least people are talking. The county officers, the governments have been talking to the government. They have some forum. And because people talk, if it's a listening government, they'll listen. And I'm happy the president also said evolution is one of the key things that is here to stay. I know there have been murmurs that probably the executive will want to kill devolution through many of these things, for instance, like what we are just alluded to, there is no enough communication. But the president reaffirmed that devolution is here to stay. So the governments should get to their space. They should talk and shout loudly, say the central government, let's talk. Because most of the people in this country are actually in the counties. And you won't succeed if you don't involve the people in the counties, irrespective of whether that project is supposed to be a national government project. There's this division between this project, be it a national government project or it's a county project. But if it's a national government project, it is being done for people who are living in the counties. So their involvement is actually very critical.
Because I can see time is pretty catching up with us. As we wind up, I want to hear from you. So what should be the way forward? The president came, the speech was read. So what happens next?
I wanted to maybe just say one word, especially about what you are talking about, the counties. If you look at that plan, they were saying every county should contribute 2,000 houses. And I checked, like Meru, they provided some land, and the Nairobi county government, governor was talking about also trying to help the national government get the affordable housing scheme. I feel like there is some level of goodwill. If only we were to push. Only we have to have a way of ensuring that we follow up from the county level. I think these plans are already there, just to say that. But I also wanted to say something that I feel is very important, especially where the way forward is concerned in our country. I'm looking at somebody like me, where I've come from, the way I've schooled, the employment I've done, the business I'm doing right now in Ndege estate in Usanim. And I'm looking at the difficulties we go through, finances, and many other things that you go through as young people. And we have employed so many people because of that, because of the business. And I'm wondering how much more we can do if we had so many businesses being able to employ the same number of people we do. We'd have a lot of employment. But I also, coming back to the statistic I was talking about, especially for betting, we have so many young people going to betting and many other things, what you would call non-gainful kind of activities. They're not economic activity, not just betting, many other things. What I'm trying to say, I think we need a new narrative in this country where we must encourage production, people who create, people who generate. If you look at the US, for example, and these big economies, people admire people who produce. That's why you have Samsungs of this world, you have Apple and Facebook and many other things. But if you ask yourself, who is the Mark Zuckerberg of Kenya, you don't know. Because in Kenya, I think the narrative is not right. We need a narrative where we encourage, especially our young people, to follow the right route. We need to encourage people to be able to produce. That's why you are even talking about manufacturing, to be able to get into business, to be able to be people who can create things. We talk about toothpick and many other things that you are not able to.
Very good.
And he also talked about our capability to be able to even manufacture. There are so many things we can be able to do. But if it is not something that people admire, especially young people, they'll not do it. So I think we need to change the narrative. And that's where corruption comes in. People know that I want to be an MCA, or two things somebody said. I want to be an MCA, or I want to be an MCA or a politician, or I want to be
a entrepreneur.
Maybe a entrepreneur, or I want to do betting. It is because of one simple concept.
Good.
The thing of narrative. People think it is so easy to get this, and people think this is the way to get progress in life, to get rich and to get all this. We change the narrative and we tell people, you can work hard, you can be able to produce, you can be able to do something for yourself, and we are very educated. I think things will start changing. No one will go to government to go and maybe get something out of it.
Job from you.
On a governance perspective, I think the president needs to hold his officers to account. The officers, many of them have let down the president. And it's high time that they walk up and smell the coffee, that the president wants to move forward with the rest of the country. So if they don't deliver, they either quit or the president gets them off. And then secondly, the politics, the political environment. It's obvious that one end of the political divide in Jubilee is anti-unity. It's anti-fight against corruption. They have to also wake up and smell the coffee. Kenyans want to be united. Kenyans don't want theft. So that wing of the Jubilee government, which is still contradicting the president when it comes to unity and the issue of corruption, they also need to shut up.
Very well.
Yes.
I think we also need some coffee. Don't you think so?
Yeah, so we do.
So we're not going to smell the coffee, but we are going to have the coffee itself. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us here, and of course for your contribution and insight. Thank you for participating on Business Insight.
Thank you.
Very good. Well, of course, we have been analyzing the State of the Nation address by President Uhuru Kenyatta, and of course you have heard it from the experts themselves.